Hello students. Welcome to today's class. Today, we are learning how to write common phrases in our native language.
Non, 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 non. Bonjour les étudiants. Je suis M. Franche. Les caractères vietnamiens sont stupides. Apprenons un peu de romain. Vive le France.
Hi students. We have a guest speaker from the Vietnam coming in today. Please welcome General Zop. I am from the Vietnam. We must support communism and Ho Chi Minh's movement. In order to do so, we must gauge each of you on your loyalty to the communist revolution, young men and women. Get in a line.
How communist are you?
I shared my juice at lunch.
I accept the class average as my test score, instead of my original score.
I hate French, ha ha ha.
My friends and I pool our homework and each do a portion.
I gave my friends some leftover rice.
You two, say goodbye to your classmates. Come with me.
Hello. I am a new, additional teacher in this classroom. I am from Japan.
Oh no. There's going to be twice the homework.
Double the work, double the oppression.
I miss Mrs. Nguyen. We must get rid of Mr. French and Mr. Japan.
Enjoy your lunch break, students.
Where is Mr. Japan getting all of the rice, and why do we not have any?
You lost the war. Now get out of my classroom.
Looks like your country is finally starting to gain its independence. Goodbye.
Look at my new look.
What's that from?
I got trained in China. They are officially a communist nation.
What? How?
Mao declared the People's Republic of China communist.
Mr.
French,
it is time for you to leave.
Hi kids. Looks like we finally have our independence.
What happened?
Honey, you have a big storm coming. Do you remember the day I left? That was the early days of the French occupation here. Over the following years, Vietnam would fight to win back its freedom. While many concepts played a role in the independence movement, nationalism was the most significant factor in its origins and rise. In fact, the events that you all experienced helped to demonstrate this point. The French wanted to implement their culture, which involved a lot of social, economic, and political reform. Unfortunately for you guys, this in part meant replacing the Chinese characters with the Latin alphabet. Chinese characters were harder for French to understand and they wanted to impose themselves over the Vietnamese, so a phonetic literature in the Latin alphabet was created. This great disrespect of the Vietnamese and their language inspired nationalism among the people. The belief that the French were better than the Vietnamese created hatred towards the French. The Vietnamese felt oppressed, which ultimately fed into the drive of independence. As I mentioned, nationalism played an important part in our fight for freedom. However, it was not the only factor. For your instance, how about the time when General Zop came in and asked you about your communism? Zop came in to purge those who were not full communists. The Vietnamese began our communist movement, and many joined due to hatred for the French out of nationalism. Zop wished to keep the communist roots by abolishing those who were not true communists. This began a separation of mindsets within Vietnam. While most all wanted independence, some sought communism, while others did not. This ultimately influenced the divide between North and South Vietnam. At one point, didn't you all have a strange second teacher? That was because during World War II France was invaded by Germany, and their ally, Japan, occupied Vietnam. Because of the presence of two enemies, there was a surge in nationalism in order to push both parties out. Ho saw this as an opportunity to create a new nationalist force that appealed to all aspects of the Vietnamese society, forming the Viet Minh. Japan had ultimate authority, but the French still had control of Vietnam. Pride among the Vietnamese was widespread as the people dealt with both the Japanese and French. The conflict of having two oppressors only helped to strengthen the determination of independence. Furthermore, the famine was a great example of how the Japanese inspired hate and thus nationalism among the Vietnamese. I heard there were days in which you all had no lunch, while the Japanese teacher ate a feast. During the summer, Japanese held large quantities of rice, while the Vietnamese people starved. This provoked the Viet Minh to become favorable among the Vietnamese and other countries, and caused another great push of nationalism to expel the Japanese, demonstrating once again why nationalism was so important to the independence movement. Finally, the Japanese were kicked out after they lost the war. A few years later, after World War II ended, Mao took power in China and declared it the Communist People's Republic of China. Mao, being communist, was supportive of the Vietnamese independence movement. Troops from Vietnam were sent to train in China. Vietnam was finally able to win its independence. And while weapons and training are important to winning a war, the will of the people is imperative to having an independence movement. The nationalism in the Vietnamese people or of the hardships throughout the many years.
Boring. You should have made a cartoon for all of that information.